This weekend on the original Rochester Press Box.
Hi, I'm Doug Miller with a list of thank yous.
I'm Dan Moriarty. Jim Boeheim announcing his retirement in 3 years.
And I'm Mike Catalana. Oh, Jim Boeheim's going to retire, but I think it's going to cost somebody else his job.
And I'm Bill Pucko. Theodore Roosevelt once banned football. Things have gotten better, but it's still a matter of freedom of choice. Join us this week on the original Rochester Press Box. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us for the original Rochester Press Box. I'm Bill Pucko, joined by Dan Moriarty from Fox Sports 1280, sitting in for John DiTullio.
Thank you.
Good to have you back. Mike Catalana, 13 WHAM Sports and Fox Rochester.
Good to be back again.
And the president of it is really our pleasure to have the president of soccer operations and the head coach of the Rochester Lancers, Doug Miller, back with us. Doug, thank you very much. Mike, what do you think? Story of the year? What happened to the Rochester Lancers this season?
I think it's fantastic because we've talked a lot about different organizations and the way they operate in this town and how difficult it is to match up with the storied franchises as in the Red Wings and the Amerks in terms of respectability. And not just because he's sitting right here, but I would agree that was so needed for that franchise, and I think it's great what he did.
You know, well, not long ago now, Soccer Sam comes out publicly, newspaper and everything, and says, we're folding up the team. You know, I've had it. Your daughter rescues the team. Run us through that story.
Well, it was back in August when there was a lot of unknowns about the league, multi-point system, single-point system. You know, I got a text from, Sam, and he said, hey, listen, we're done. It's getting too difficult. I said, okay. I have my own businesses that I can go on to. And as I got home that night, my daughters are there in tears. And she said, Daddy saved my Lancers. And so I called Sam up. I said, you asked me to come out of retirement, to help this storied franchise from a long time ago. I said, I need one more year. And I can handle the soccer part of it, and you can take a step back. And, that's what we did, and we had 2.5 months, to assemble the team, to get us to be as competitive as possible. And I look at what we accomplished. I'd say, C+, B- for this year because I want, to achieve, greatness with this franchise. And, the culture that we have built is just euphoric. And it reminded me back of the days of the mid-'90s.
Danny, you grew up with them when Rochester was like I don't know, at the most we've had 9 professional sports teams operating in this town. How important do the Lancers fit in with the whole picture?
Oh, I mean, for me, growing up, going to those games on a Friday night, that was a rock party. That was a concert, basically. Crowds were unbelievable. I mean, Doug Miller was the biggest name in town. Going to watch Doug, Lennon Steenkamp, all those guys play. And just following the story this year, what a whirlwind it's been to cover it and watch it. I can't imagine what it's been like for Doug. New league, no team is back. He's in his coach. Got some time on the field as well. I mean, it's been what a crazy year.
And what a change when we came in, right?
Yeah.
Amerks, Red Wings, an organist. I mean, it was the trivia answers. Fred Costello, the only person to play for the Red Wings and the Amerks. And again, boy, has the landscape changed.
Well, and again, you have to reach a certain point, too. There are some franchises that winning and losing is maybe not as important. Then there's others where it's the most important thing, like we've talked about the Nighthawks, just the way they have established with their fan base about winning, and they've established that so well. But I think what Doug and the Lancers have been able to do, especially this year, is, and it's important in this market, is to be able to do both. Have the atmosphere where people can bring their kids, enjoy it, but they want the team to win, too. Mm-hmm. And I think that's enjoyable. And then when you make the playoffs and you do that, I think you show everybody you're serious about both.
Just to cap it, what's the thing you're most proud of that happened this year?
Winning their first playoff game, then a playoff series. But I would say the growth of the players individually. When I first brought them in, I told them I wanted players that were like Marines. Because when you give a Marine an order, a Marine goes and does it. And by the end, that's the mentality of the players. And they all had a belief, in what we were trying to do. At the beginning, none of them said we have a chance to win an MASL champions. We're destined to do it. And by going into Baltimore, where we should have won that game, and we lost 6-4, they all believed. And that was probably the most exciting part for me as a coach, as a mentor. I'm very difficult, to play for because my expectations are a lot, and they kind of bought into it.
Oh, nice job. Hey, when we return, we have, does Chris Borland's retirement from the San Francisco 49ers change the way we perceive football? That's when the original Rochester Press Box continues. Welcome back to the original Rochester Press Box. Chris Borland retired from the San Francisco 49ers this last week. Mike, is this a game-changing event?
No, I really don't think it is. I think it could be game-changing at a participation level for younger athletes. If I'm a parent sitting at home, I've heard a lot of stories. This one adds to it. This one adds to it even more because this is more preventative from a young guy who has options, who used this college experience to, get into the NFL, but has decided, I have other options. I'm concerned about this going forward. I'm not going to play. If I'm a parent, it's just one more thing that says, maybe not football, maybe whether it's soccer, lacrosse, whatever it is. I don't think it impacts the NFL one iota. I really don't. I've heard from so many players, talked to so many former players. I've had discussions with Steve Tasker and Ray Bentley when I do the games with them, and they will fully admit all the things that happened to them, what they knew, what they didn't know. They wouldn't change a thing while they're in it. And I think the current players, here's Bobby Wagner from the Seahawks came out and said, all due respect to Borland, I love this game too much. No matter what it is, I'm playing. I don't think it has an impact on the current players because of where they are in the game at the NFL level.
I think Borland's the exception. I do think the Jake Lockers, Jason Worlds, and the Patrick Willises of the world, when you make a decent amount of money in those 7 to 8 years, especially with the knowledge they have now on what their life could be like after football, you may want to be able to enjoy some of that money and the livelihood you've made yourself by playing in the NFL and getting yourself set up for life. So I do think we may see more of that. Borland, though, surprised me because it was the 1 year. It's not like he made a bunch of money.
Yeah.
And the NFL had to issue a statement when he made this announcement because he said it's because of the concerns in terms of my brain, CTE, and concussions. So they felt a need to issue a statement. I think he's more the exception. Some of these other guys, though, I think we may see more guys retire before the age of 30.
But even the other injuries. I mean, Peyton Manning has more money than God, right? And he's playing with this neck injury that at some point you wonder, why is he still out there on the field? He's won championships. He has everything he does. I think that is still the mindset of most NFL players. I'm not saying they're right, but I think most NFL players, it's the love of the game, the competition, and what it brings to them, not just the money part.
Dougie, soccer isn't football, but was there ever a time in your career where you wondered, is this worth what I'm going through to be a professional athlete?
On the flip side, you're talking millions and millions of dollars. For soccer players, you're talking about survival and making $500 a month. So injuries are a part of the game. I think this in 3 months is blown over. I don't think athletes who want to compete, especially the 6-7 years, retire after you've made your money. The first year, I think it's just kind of a way that maybe there's alternatives that they're looking for in regards to, hey, this is an insurance thing. I'm getting out because, hey, I'm afraid I'm going to be injured for life. But the NFL has funds for that. But I think in 3 months this blows over because athletes want to compete. We compete for chicken scratch, and we have injuries. I have no ACL in my knee. Tell me to compete today, I'm going out there to compete.
How old? Just for the record, how old are you?
I'll be 46 in May.
46. You're still actively playing, so you don't identify with this mindset at all.
No, I think when you talk about the Peyton Mannings, the best of the best, he's got a mindset. Yeah, he's got a neck injury. He could go paralyzed if he gets hit wrong, but he's still competing. That's what their makeup is. That's what makes them so great. And you talk about the greatest athletes in the world. There's something that's different in all of them. because their mindset is, hey, I'm willing to sacrifice over here, even though it's dangerous. Similar to a Marine. Hey, it's dangerous, but I'm going to sacrifice for my country.
Like it or not, when we return.
And you don't need to be Native American to realize it is offensive. And it's not politically correct. It's the right thing to do.
He was an idiot for throwing him that pitch. The guy's phenomenal. He had no reason to give him anything, especially a fastball to hit.
It's simply that these two guys, Ronaldo and Tom Brady, are too good looking.
I like it, just don't admit to it.
Everybody wants to hate on the best in the world. You know, he's here to stay, and he wants to build something big time.
The bottom line is, still nobody's going to like A-Rod.
Welcome back to the original Rochester Press Box. Bill with Dan, Mike, and Doug Miller, our special guests on the Rochester Lancers. Dan, let's go to you. Like it or not, Darryl Gross resigned from Syracuse.
I like it. I mean, going back to when you read the report, the thing that bothered me the most was the academic fraud with Fab Melo and this whole convening the meeting of some of the 7 or 8 minds at Syracuse and trying to find a way to keep this guy active so we could possibly win a national championship. I mean, when you look back at Gross's tenure, the one thing that does stand out on the positive side is seeing the landscape and knowing we got to get to the ACC. Before the Big East crumbled and they found their way into a conference knowing that football kind of runs everything, but also a conference where basketball, Syracuse fits in naturally with recruiting and everything else as well. Outside of that, what really stands out from Darryl Gross's tenure? The football team's been a disaster. They've gone through a few different coaches. Greg Robinson brought it to the worst time in the history of the program. The one positive, I think, was the move to the ACC. Outside of that, what can you really say?
Well, somebody had to take the fall for it. And as we're taping this now, you know, Coach Boeheim has said 3 years and all. I will say this, and you know, I've been critical of Jim Boeheim for a lot of things, but Jim Boeheim has brought a lot of great things to Syracuse University. I mean, he been there, put them on the map, kept them on the map, did all those things. So in that way, he deserves more consideration for his role in it and maybe the way he leaves. I got nothing for Darryl Gross. He came from a corrupt program at USC, came to Syracuse, brought some of that with him, and I don't think any Syracuse fan is shedding a tear that he's gone. It'll be very interesting to see who replaces him and what the background of
I'm
that
surprised they
person
didn't
is.
do this like a month ago when they sanctioned themselves, is to offer Darryl up as part of that and maybe, you know, allow Jim Boeheim a little extra wiggle room maybe?
Yeah, maybe, but I don't think the NCAA was going to be as concerned about that at the moment. I mean, they were going to punish the university, and their role right now is to punish the coach, right? I mean, that's what they like to do, the public shaming. So they handled that part. Then I think Syracuse has to respond to their board of trustees, and if you're on that board, somebody's going to pay for this, and it's Darryl Gross.
Doug, like it or not, Kentucky in the NCAA basketball tournament, their presence.
Yeah, I think it's great because you know, you always want to have that Goliath that's there. Everybody else is that David. I think it you know, gives it an extra challenge for those teams that are trying to beat the best of the best. You know, I relate it to us trying to go through Baltimore. I said, you know, if you're going to become a champion, you got to beat a 7-time champion, going to be an 8-time champion. So, you know, there's always going to be that Goliath there. And, it, you know, for athletes who want to compete, you want to play against the best and know once you beat them, no one can ever take that away.
It was a much more compelling watch, that game was, because you'd never beaten Baltimore before.
We still haven't, but the last 2 games, they realized that we can compete, you know, with the best in the league.
This is different, though, than back when UCLA was dominating, because no one could beat them. I mean, when UCLA was winning championships, it was almost comical. I mean, a lot of young people don't even remember how dominant they were. They won every game for years in a row, and there was almost no chance. This Kentucky team can lose. I don't think they're going to, but this team can
I think
lose.
in terms of dominance, this is the best team we've seen since that. You know, in terms of them being that much better than everybody else.
Yeah, probably. But they are still a flawed team. They're just an immensely successful defensive team but on a given night, they can lose.
Michael, like it or not, Charles Clay's signing.
I think he's a good player. I see the reason why the Bills are going for him, because they have a desperate need at a versatile pass-catching tight end. But that is an awful lot of money to give him. And if you have Charles Clay on your team, on this Bills team, it's a good thing because he's a better player than what they had. My concern would be, what does this mean down the line? I mean, they're paying this guy a lot of money. I mean, they're paying him more than Gronkowski's making with the Patriots.
This comes to roost later on for them, too.
It could be, and just because you pay a good player like he's a great player doesn't make him a great player. It means he's a happy guy, got a lot of money, one place or the other. But I think he'll help the team. So on the field, it's a good thing, but it's a lot of
Boy,
cash.
people do think that. You know, you give an athlete a lot of money and they think it makes him better and it makes him smarter. All of a sudden, we care about his political views. Unfinished business when we return. Welcome back to the original Rochester Press Box, Unfinished Business. Dan.
Jim Boeheim. When you say the name Jim Boeheim, you get different reactions from just about everybody. And for those of you who have heard this week, the retirement in 3 years, is it soon enough? For some of you, probably not. Actually, for most of you, maybe not, especially with the NCAA report that came out this past month. But Jim Boeheim, when I hear the name Jim Boeheim, what do I think? I think great coach. The greatest? No. Flawed? Of course. Was he perfect? Absolutely not. Neither was his program. That much is for sure, and we found that out recently. But for this Syracuse fan, like I said, great coach, but also a guy that made the winners in not only Central New York, where I went to college, but Western New York much more tolerable, at least for my past 28 years. Especially since I wasn't getting much out of my favorite football team with the Buffalo Bills missing the playoffs for the last 15. Syracuse's basketball program has meant a lot to me, and I know it's meant a lot to Central and Western New York over Jim Boeheim's tenure. Now he's going to walk away in 3 years. What's his legacy? Yeah, the recent stuff is obviously part of it. It's going to tarnish it, and he got some wins taken away, and that much was deserved. But man, did I enjoy watching the Syracuse program while he was the head basketball coach. Is it going to be the same without him? I don't know, but we're going to find out.
You know what I like is that there is an end game to this, is that it's not the kind of thing with Boeheim that we're going to just go and go and go and say, well, you know, he deserves to kind of call his own shots here, and, you know, suddenly he's 95 years old, he's still in the position, so this is good, I think. Doug.
Yeah. Final thoughts are thank yous. Thank you to the Rochester fans. Thank you to what I feel the best local owner is, Sam Fantuzzo, in Saving Soccer LLC, for allowing myself the opportunity to bring the Rochester Lancers back to a storied franchise. We've shown that we can compete with the best of the best in the MASL. I'm looking forward to next year and winning an MASL championship. But most importantly, to thank my wife and my family for being a part of this journey. It makes it really exciting, you know, throughout the entire year.
You know, you'd have been gratified to have been up at the garage door when you guys were playing in Baltimore, and they had it up on the TV. Place was packed, enthusiastic soccer fans. They didn't even have the audio on it because they had, you know, it wasn't a great connection, but that would have made you proud. I mean, there were people back home that were really pulling hard for you guys when you were in Baltimore. It was a great season, Doug.
It was really exciting, and you know, I'm proud to be called the head coach of the Rochester Lancers.
Cool, Mike.
I'm going to go back to what Dan started talking about, Coach Boeheim, and I'm going to talk about going to the future. And I think the person who's going to lose out the most in this, I guess, beyond Darryl Gross losing his job, is Mike Hopkins. Mike Hopkins has been the loyal soldier for this team. He played for Coach Boeheim, been an assistant for him, has waited and waited and waited his turn. And I think this announcement of Gross being out and all the problems the university has had, and now this 3-year window, I think it makes it more and more difficult for Syracuse to eventually put Mike Hopkins in that job. There'll be a new athletic director. likely someone coming from outside the organization. I think when you're having these problems with the NCAA and you want to show change and you know Coach Boeheim is moving on, a new AD is probably going to come from the outside. I don't think that AD will be put in a position to say, oh, by the way, your head basketball coach is already on the staff. Now, he may decide Mike Hopkins is the guy, but I think it's going to be pretty clear to Mike Hopkins very soon whether he really is still in line for that job. I think we'll see if Mike Hopkins now starts again to look outside of Syracuse University for an opportunity he deserves as a coach that he just might never get at Syracuse.
I often wonder, and he wouldn't, he wouldn't give you an answer to the question. If you'd ask Mike now, says, would you do anything differently with hindsight?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of guys who wait, and I think sometimes it works out for them. But with everything that's going on at Syracuse, I may be totally wrong. Their plan may stay in place, and they may get an AD in that says, oh yeah, we're going to continue this. I just think there will be a point where they say we are moving on from what has been here for all these years, and it'll be a new head coach.
Well, President Theodore Roosevelt at the turn of the prior century once made football illegal. College football was so brutal at that time when it was just being born. So at least in that regard, we've made some progress. As far as Chris Borland goes, you look at anybody else in a profession, the risks that come with a job. If you're a cop, you know the risk. You're a fireman, you know the risk. If you're a soccer player, you know the risk. You're a circus performer, you know the risks involved. In being in America, freedom of choice and everything, it's your choice whether you want to accept those risks and take on the job with it. It's a little bit presumptuous of us to try to make the rules for NFL players and decide, whether you should do this or whether you should do that, whether the game is too safe for you or not. That's really a decision that is up to the players. I commend Chris Borland for getting out for all the right reasons, but I also defend all the people that want to stay in the game for all the right reasons. Thank you for joining us. That's our show, the Original Rochester Press Box. Danny, thank you, man.
Thank you.
Sitting in well. We'll
appreciate it.
Hopefully welcome John DiTullio back at some point, if I remember what he looks like.
Yeah.
Mike, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Doug Miller, again, great job. Thanks for having me. It was great having you back on the Original Rochester Press Box.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week.